My name's Alex, and I have a problem with handhelds. I have had so many throughout my life, starting with the Game Boy, Game Gear, going right up into the GPD-Win 2 a few years ago. When the Steam Deck came out, I was, one of the first people there, hitting the refresh button, trying to get my order in. I love them. AyaNeo produced some really fantastic handhelds, but I returned all of them because of Windows. I just hated the Windows experience. I backed the original Founders Edition back in 2020, and it came in 2021, and I was excited to play with it. I immediately loaded Doom Eternal on it, but I just couldn't get over my hate of Windows, and so I found myself keep coming back to my Steam Deck. That is until I discovered SteamFork. Now, I tried many other things, Chimera OS, Hollow OS, I tried Bazite, and the one thing I could never get working was gyro. And as an FPS player, primarily, gyro, that was the deal breaker for me. No gyro, no OS. And so, I tried to muddle around with Windows, and then eventually I'd just be sending the device back and going back to my deck. But SteamFork, and I think Bazite has also fixed their gyro issues too, and you can now emulate gyro through a DualSense controller, but I prefer SteamFork. And the first thing I installed SteamFork on was this, the Air Pro, which has a 5560 AMD CPU. And immediately the gyro wasn't working, and I was like, oh no, it's like one of these other distros where the gyro isn't working. But I put a message on Reddit, and one of the developers immediately came back and said, oh, I think this is the problem. And immediately was able to fix the gyro for me. And I was like, this is amazing. And I played through some Doom Eternal, some Wolfenstein. And then I thought, well, I wonder, what other devices it works on. And one of the great things about this is you can also emulate, on SteamFork, you can also emulate the Steam Deck controller. So, whereas on Bazite, you're emulating a DualSense and all of the button images come up funny, and I'm not a PlayStation player, so that was kind of weird for me. But with SteamFork, emulating a Steam Deck controller was the way to go. One little quirk that I will tell you about is that if you try and sleep the device while emulating a Steam Deck controller, it will hang and it won't go to sleep. But the workaround for that is you turn off the emulation, so you go back to the default controller setting, and then you can sort of get around that. And that's a bug with Input Plumber, which is the software that kind of routes the button pushes. So hopefully that'll get fixed in some future updates, but works really well on the Air Pro. Works really well on the Lite. I also tried it on the Lite. This is a device that came out in March, the Next Pro Lite, 4500 CPU, and the device itself feels cheap, and it's got a lot of light bleed, so I'm actually sending this one back because of the light bleed that I've got. But again, SteamFork works really well. Works really well on the AyaNeo Geek. This has an 800p screen, which I really enjoy as well, because if you get the 1200p version, the AyaNeo 2 and the other Geek models, when you have to lower the resolution to 800p to keep up the frame rate, the text goes fuzzy. So I really liked SteamFork on this 800p version. And again, everything works, even the gyro. And lastly, also tried it on the Air Plus. This is a 6800U version. Works really well on this, and I really enjoyed. And this I think is the one I'm going to keep, because I do this. I buy things on eBay, and then I tinker with them, and then I sell them onto eBay. So I think this is the one that I'm going to be sticking with. This plays Cyberpunk 2077 really well. The gyro works really well. Again, SteamFork breathed new life into all my AyaNeo devices. Next, I'll show you how to install SteamFork and to configure it. Super easy. In order to install SteamFork, it's dead easy. On your laptop, I'm showing you here on the AyaNeo Geek, but you'll want to do this on a laptop or another computer. Or well, I guess you could do it on here with Windows too. Do it on whatever you like. What am I talking about? Go to the SteamFork GitHub, github.com/SteamFork. You can scroll down. It gives you the device support here. And lots of AyaNeo devices you'll see are supported, which is fantastic. You go to the downloads, choose the latest download, which I have found to be stable on all of these devices. And then once you've got downloaded that image, you'll need something to flash it to a thumb drive. And so I use Ballerina Etcher, and it's super easy. In fact, this is sort of an ad for it, but the interface looks exactly like this. You select the image, you select the drive, and then you hit flash, and just boom, there it is. Once you've done that, and I actually did this already, of course, you will then plug in, I know my battery's a little low, you'll then plug in your drive, and then you're going to want to boot from that drive. So if I shut down this computer, and this is where it can get a little tricky, and this is where I suggest having a keyboard and mouse setup here. You see that you've got that I've got a little dongle in up here, and I've got a nice little keyboard and mouse. Yes, power off now. There you go. Bye bye. This way, on boot up, you can press F7 to go into the boot menu. Otherwise, you have to press left C, power up, and then power on, and then sometimes it like flicks straight to the default again. It's kind of fiddly to get it to work, but if you've got a keyboard and that plugged in like I have now, you can just press on and then just jam the F7 key until it asks us what to boot from. See, and I'm not going to boot from the NVMe. I'm going to boot from my little dongle that's plugged in, and this is an installer that I created earlier, and then wait for it to boot up. Now, of course, you can get a little bit better performance in Linux over Windows. It's only 2 or 3 frames a second, but you know, if you're struggling to run, Cyberpunk 2027, at those 3 or 4 frames a second might be useful. Now it boots into this like KDE desktop environment. You can just click out of that. That's sort of introducing you to the desktop environment, and then you just double click on install SteamFork. Right? It says welcome to SteamFork installer. Next, and they've streamlined it really, really easily for us. And it asks you, where you want to select, what drive you want to select for installation. Now, be careful because Linux, if you're usually a Windows user, Linux has kind of weird names like SDA, SBA, right, for your drive. So that's the flash drive that we're running on right now. Anything that says NVMe is going to be your internal drive. Now, SteamFork can be installed on an SD card. So if you're going to install it on an SD card, then make sure you're selecting the SD card and not your internal drive. Usually you can tell because the internal drive will say NVMe on it. And then you set up a password for your user and a password for your root user as well. Note them down because you may need them. I mean, probably not, but I needed them because something was kind of funky, and I was working with one of the developers, and they emailed me and said, sign in as your root user, and then I had this moment of like, oh crap, do I remember what my root user password was? And fortunately I did. Cool. And then once you've done those things, you just hit install, and it will install, and then it will reboot straight into, I think it boots straight into the Steam interface. So if I take that out and we reboot, you log in as you normally would on Steam, and then everything just worked out of the box, which I really, really appreciated. Now, if you want to do some controller emulation and get gyro working, there are a couple of little things that you have to do, which I'll show you right now. Once it boots back up. But in theory, you could just go ahead and start downloading games and play with the built-in Xbox controller, or at least the AyaNeo devices will, it shows as an Xbox controller, and that's why you can see the Xbox symbol down here. But once you've set up this part, you'll then want to switch over to desktop mode if you want to do any sort of tinkering. So if you switch to desktop mode, and you can set up helpers. So if you double click on set up helpers, it just gives you this really simple, so you can put Decky Loader on there. So you can have simple Decky plugins. Give it a Google if you don't know what that is. But then you've got Hue Sync. This is a Decky plugin for the RGB controls, for the lights behind the controllers. Simple Decky TDP, which is a way to control the TDP, so the total power draw of the unit. So you can lower your power draw to get better battery life, but that will be at the expense of performance. And sometimes you want to boost the performance in order to get those couple extra frames per second. And then Decky Plumber, which is this really fabulous little program that they have created to emulate all of your favorite controllers. So then if you return to gaming mode, once you've installed all of those things, you'll see that you now have a Decky plugin that's on the side of your Steam menu. So once that loads up, I'll show you. I love all those Steam animations. So cool. So, right, let's use the actual buttons. So, and all the buttons are mapped perfectly. So all your buttons work, which is really fantastic. So now you can go into the Decky plugin, which is this kind of like plug down here. Hue Sync. You can enable your LED control. One of the things that I like is I turned it off on suspend mode because it used to pulsate blue on suspend mode. And I'm like, why am I wasting those batteries? So I have it off during suspend mode, and I made it purple because purple is my favorite color. And then you've got your simple Decky TDP. So you see I'm running at 15 watts now. You can set your minimum and your maximum. Don't push it too far. Because you don't want to go past the thermal capabilities of your device. So if you know that, AyaNeo would let you push it to 18 watts in Windows, then you'll probably want to set it as a maximum of 18 watts here. You could probably push it to 20 or 22, but I encourage you then to turn on the performance metrics and make sure that your temperatures aren't going too high and burning out your device. And then, lastly, the thing that I really appreciated, and is the reason why I'm going to keep SteamFork and reason why I'm keeping these devices around, is Decky Plumber. And you'll see that you can emulate an Xbox, a DualSense, a Steam Deck, and an Xbox Elite. I am always going to default to the Steam Deck controller, give it a couple of seconds to kind of click in, and then you'll see if I go to Settings, Controller, Advanced Calibration Settings, Advanced Calibration, Gyro, you can see all the gyros are just kind of jittering around, showing you that gyro is actually working, which was the one thing that I was so excited about. Again, there is a little bug whereby if you are emulating a Steam Deck controller and you try and sleep, it will hang. So before sleeping, you'll want to go back to default. And that has worked for the most part. I can sleep on Red Dead, I can sleep on a lot of the games, and then come back in and change the controller. The one game that doesn't seem to like that is Cyberpunk, because if I change the controller, it says controller has been disconnected, and then even if I change the emulation back, it doesn't seem to pick up that the controller's been plugged back in. But all of the Steam controls work and the screen works, so then I end up having to exit out of the game and come back in again. So it's sort of taken sleep out of the game for me a little bit for Cyberpunk, unless I want to stick to the Xbox controller. But I like my gyro. I like my gyro for aiming. But anyway, that is SteamFork on multiple AyaNeo devices. It works out of the box. It's great. The devs are really responsive. Support their work. Put it on your device. Have a play around. It also supports being installed on an SD card. So you could play around with it like I did. I played around with it on an SD card first, and then when I was ready, I nuked my Windows. Anyway, have fun playing. Yeah.